It's we're actually at 69 today. It's not a test, but let's just quickly review the Mishnah from the bottom of 68b.
69A, I believe, but you're right to review.
Yeah. Okay. Hamachar Sasada, if you sell a field, Machar, what is included in the field, Machar Zabanim Shem Mutsarcha, that includes the stones that are for use for the needed for the field, Esakanim Shabakarim Shem Mutsarcha, the reeds in the vineyard that are for the benefit of the vineyard, Hatzvua Shim Mukuberes Lakarka, anything that's still growing there, Eschitzas Akanim Shipsucha Mibes Rova, the bunch of reeds that cover an area less than a quarter kav. As a shomera sheino asuya betit, a building of a watchman's building that is not plastered. Charuv b'sheino morkav, carob trees that are not yet grafted. Basula sashikma, a virgin sycamore tree. Meaning that it hasn't yet been pruned, no one's cut it yet. Of a lomach or lois it does not, the sale does not include stones that are not beneficial for the field. Lois akanim shabakerim shein losarka, or the reeds that are not for the use of the vineyard. Lois atzvua shehitlushim karka, or anything that's already been harvested. Bisman shamar lo, if the seller says explicitly to the buyer, he v'chomasha b'socha, the field and anything in it, then all of these things above are included. Benkach u benkach, but either way, whether or not he has that specification, lo machar lo, in other words, even if he makes that specification, everything in it, still lo machar, these things are not included. Lo eschitzas hakanim shi beis rabba, the thicket of reeds that are at least a quarter kav, lo shemer shi asuya betit, a watchman's hut that is plastered, of the lowest sahar from Morkov, or a carob tree that has been grafted already, lowest sadan hashikma, or a sycamore tree that has already been pruned. Okay, let's see what Gemara has to say about all these things. Top of 69a. What does that mean? Stones that are beneficial for the field. Here in Bava, they explain this means stones that are for holding down the harvested grain in the field. Ula Amar, but Ula says Avadim Hasiduros Lagada, talking about stones that are arranged to be a fence. Baha Tani Rav Chia, but didn't Rav Chia say Avadim Tsevuros Lagader? Stones that are piled up in the field for a fence, they are included with the sale. So, like, even if they're not yet arranged to be a border, to be a fence, even if they're just piled up in the middle and waiting for someone to use them for a fence, that does get sold with the field. So what is Ula talking about? Ula is saying that it has to be Siduros Lagader, it has to be already arranged as a fence, acting as a fence. But didn't Rav Chia say that even if they're not yet at that point, they're just kind of piled up in the field waiting to be used? Tani says, Mar says, so okay, so let's reread the Brisa. Siduros, stones that are Siduros, they're 1 second. Yeah, so let's reinterpret Rav Chia. Rav Chia doesn't say Siduros, it says Siduros. So we're restating Rav Chia to accord with Ula. It's not that the stones are just piled up, it's that they're actually arranged as a fence. Okay. So Hachatagimu Avne the 1 second. Okay, Hachatagimu Avne the Achba. Here in Babel, they understand stones that are weighing down harvested grain. Rabbi Meir the Mitaknan, but according to Rabbi Meir, that he says these stones are included in the sale if they've been mitaknan, they've been prepared for that, like they've been, I don't know, maybe placed for that, or picked out. You pick out the right kind of stone, the right way. But even if they're not yet in the field, right? The Rabbanan huda machtan. But to the rabbis that say it's only when they're actually in the field that we include them. So Rabbi Meir, as we've seen, is more inclined to include more things with the field. So he's saying even stones that were prepared for the field and not even on the field would be included. But the rabbis say no, it's only if they're on the field. Uliula, now according to Ula Diamar Havalim Hasturis Ligader, now Ula said, when are these stones included? When they're arranged as a fence. Rabbi Meir Dimitaknan, Afagav Lo Sidran. According to Rabbi Meir, that means that the stones that are included with the field, it means that it's Ula is saying that the stones have been prepared but not yet arranged, like not yet piled up. So maybe you need to smooth them out, or maybe I don't even know what that means to prepare the field. Maybe they're just selected, right? You need the right size, the right weight, whatever. And Rabbanan, but according to the rabbis who run, when does Rabbi Meir include the stones? Only if they've already been arranged, like they've been piled up, that's when they're included. Okay. Now the Mishnah says the reeds that are in the vineyard that are for the benefit of the vineyard, those are included. Kanim, what are reeds doing in the vineyard, right? This like what does one have to do with the other? Or not what they're doing there, but what benefit could they have to the vineyard? Like what does the vineyard need with reeds? Amar Dvei Rabbi Yanai, Kanim Hamachulak, and we're talking about like smoothed out reeds, Shema Midim Tachas Agafanim. You put them under the grapevines to support the grapevines, right? To get them off the ground, right? They're like a trellis, they're acting as a trellis. Now, so Rabbi Meir, the Mishpayan, according to Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir, the Mishpayan, that's only when are they included? Only if they've been like whittled down or planed to be used for this purpose. But even if they haven't yet been placed to support the grapevines, but the rabbis who are more restrictive, they're saying, when these reeds are included, only when they've already been stuck in the ground and actually supporting the reeds. But if they're just prepared and they're not being used yet, they're not included, according to the rabbis. Okay, next piece of the Mishnah is lakarka, grain that's still growing, right? It hasn't yet been harvested. Even if it's ready to be cut, like it's standing ready, it's obviously ripe, it's ready to be harvested. But the Mishnah tells you that even if it's still not yet harvested, it belongs to the field. Seems rather obvious, but a mat of reeds that is smaller than a base rova, a quarter kav area of alpha gav dalime, even if it's like a strong reeds, even though it's like well made and so on. Even so, it's not considered separate from the field as part of the field. What about a watchman's hut that is not plastered? Even if it's not attached to the ground, it's still included with the field. I'm sorry, did I say that wrong? It's not. So it's not a separate building. It's not viewed as a separate thing. It is included with the field because it's like it's so ramshackle that you can't even call it a separate structure. These two kinds of trees, the carob tree that hasn't been grafted yet, and the sycamore tree that hasn't yet been pruned. Even if they're like strong, well established in the field, because they haven't yet been worked as separate items, they're included with the field. Now the Mishnah goes on to things that are not included. These things are not included in the sale. Stones that are not for the use of the field, not beneficial to the field. Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, who we assume or we know is more more inclined to include things in the sale of the field. Dolomi Takman. It's talking about stones that are not yet been selected or prepared in some way for use. Those are not included. According to the rabbis, even stones that have already been prepared for use, they're not included in the sale, so long as they haven't been placed in the field. According to Ula, Diamar Avanim Asturis Lagader, this is a rerun of what we were saying before, essentially, but viewed from the other perspective. According to Ula Diamar Avanim Asturis Lagader, who said that the Mishnah is talking about stones that are arranged for a fence. So Rabbi Meir Dolomi Takna. According to Rabbi Meir, it's talking about stones that have not yet been selected or prepared for use as a fence. According to the rabbis, it means stones that maybe they've already been prepared, but they haven't been arranged in a fence-like way yet. And the Mishnah says these things are not included in the sale. Reeds that are in the vineyard that are not for the benefit of the vineyard. Rabbi Meir lo mishpayan. According to Rabbi Meir, what does that mean? They're not sold as long as they haven't yet been shaped for their purpose, right? Then they're not included. But the rabbis say, yeah, they are included if they're not, even if they're prepared, but if they haven't been set up yet, then they're not sold with the field. Now, unharvested grain, even if the grain is still needs to be to remain unharvested, or not unharvested, but like ungathered, right? If it's like when the Gemara's assumption is when you harvest grain, it has to lie out in the field and dry out before you gather it in. But if it's but once it's been harvested, once it's been cut from the ground, even though it still needs to remain in the field to dry before it can be gathered, it's not included because it has actually been cut. A amount of reeds that covers more than a quarter kav is not included. Even if the reeds are not particularly thick, right? Even if they're small reeds. Not only reeds, even if you have like lavender or something fragrant growing, even if it's a small part of the field, but you'd say, oh, that's the lavender field, it's a separate thing. Then it would not be sold with it. So I think, like I should have mentioned before, the idea of the reeds is that you have a field, and like off in the corner there's a part of the field that's covered with reeds, right? Rather than wheat or whatever the field is used for. So that part of it is called, the reed field or the reed section. That's not included if it's significant enough, it's not included in the sale. And the Gemara is telling us here that if it's something fragrant like lavender or something which has, I guess, more of an independent identity, people are more interested in the part of the field where the lavender is growing, then even a small area would be excluded. Rav Papa says, "Who the Karla Varda de Flanya?" That's if it's referred to by a separate name, like that's Joe's lavender patch. Then that would not be included in the sale of the larger property, of course, unless it's specifically included. But if you just say I'm selling the field, it excludes this part that has a separate identity. Okay, and it's not including the watchman's hut that is plastered. Even if it's attached to the ground, and you would think that it's included in the field, No, it's not sold. It's not included in the sale because it's considered a separate item. It's like a trailer. Um, by Rav Elazar. Rav Elazar asks, Malbanos shel Pesachim Mahu. If you sell a house, then what about the doorstops? Like the frame of the door. If the frame is attached with plaster or mortar, loti bailach. Don't even ask. It's part of the house. Kiti bailach, then the kite besiche. If you have you've kind of stuck into the ground or stuck into the house with pegs, but not in a more permanent way. This frame. Is that considered furniture or that you can take out of the house after you sell it, or is it considered part of the house? My Taikuk Mara says no answer. Boy Reb Zera. Another question. What about window frames? Maybe it's just for there it's just like decorative and it's not really part of the house. So Dilma came the mechabre since it's attached to the house, it's part of the house. Teku. Again, don't get the answer. But Rabbi Yirmiyah asks the following question: Malvanil shulkare hamitamo. If you sell a bed, what about the blocks that are placed underneath the bed? So the bed needed to be raised off the ground for whatever reason. Maybe just flooding or even just dampness. It shouldn't the legs of the bed shouldn't start to rot, so you put these blocks underneath them. So when you sell the bed, does it include the blocks? Um, if the uh, if they're attached, so like if you lifted the bed, then the blocks would come with it. Loti blocks, not even a question. They go with the bed, they're part of the bed. If they aren't really attached to the bed. How about that? Teku. We don't know. Next part of the mission was Velosa Harv Hamurka Velosa Shikma. The carob tree that has been grafted or the sycamore tree that has been pruned, those are part of the field. The Afagav, the are not part of the field, not included. The Afagav the Ktine, even if they are like not very strong trees, they're thin. Milani Mile, where do you get this from? Amar Vida Marav, Tiamakra, Vayakam Sedeh Ephron Asher Machpelah. When Abraham buys the field from Ephron, it says that the field of Ephron in the Machpelah, what became Abraham's, was established as Abraham's. And it continues, Hasadeh V'chol Asher Bo, V'chol Eitz Asher Basadeh Asher B'chol Gvula Saviv, everything in it, and all the trees, and everything within its boundaries, right? Mi Shesarich L'Gvul Saviv, a tree needs a boundary around it, that needs a boundary around it in order to identify who owns it, is included in the field Yatsuelu, but these kinds of trees, Shein Strichen L'Gvul Saviv, they don't need a boundary around them to be identified because someone's already worked on them, someone's pruned them or someone's grafted them. So now everybody knows it's Joe's tree, right? That is a tree that has its own identity, as it were, is not included in the sale of the field. Amar of Masharshia, Mikan Limitzarim Min Hatara. This Masharsha says, by the way, this teaches us, this pasuk teaches us that a field includes the borders. If you sell a field and it has like a border around it, like a strip of land, maybe, that teaches you that the border itself is included in the sale. Sherbachol Gvulo Saviv is intended to include the boundaries. Amar Vida. If you sell a field, you have to write in the deed. I'm giving you the palms, the young tree, the saplings, the chutzin and the tzitzin, which are kinds of other varieties of palms in the field. However, it's not totally required. In other words, if you didn't, you should specify these things that are being included, but if you didn't, it's still automatically specified or included. Filahache shufra deshtaruhu. It's better to do it. Like I often see in contracts for the avoidance of doubt. So it's better to spell these things out so that there's no dispute later. But if you didn't, the lie is it's still included. Now, what if you specify I'm selling you the lot and the palms? Um, um, now, then what are we talking about? I think the Gemara is addressing here. Are we talking about, is he talking about palms on the field or two separate palms by specifying it separately? Chazina. So we look and see what's going on. Easily declay, if the seller has other palms aside from the ones on the land, Yovle trade declay, then he has to include, besides the land, at least two palms. If he lay slay, but if he doesn't have any other palms, Zavin trade declay, then he has to buy two palms and give it to him. In other words, when he says I'm selling you the land and the palms, he's definitely including a separate thing, separate palms. If he has palms, give him the palms. If not, go out and get some so that you can give it to him, to the buyer. Filay, but if he Vimashabde, what if he has other palms, but they are subject to a lien by someone else? Tragically, then you have to go redeem that lien. You have to go buy them or release the lien with the other party. Now, Arabidikle, if he says I'm selling you land with palms, right? Before he said Arabidikle, land and palms. Now, if you say land with palms, then that means palms in the land that I'm selling you. So Chasinam, now look at what the case is. Isbadikle, if the land has palms on it, Yavle, then they're included. Ilav, if not, Mekach Taos, who the whole thing is null and void because he didn't fulfill the contract, right? He says I'm selling you a field with palms. Turns out there are no palms there. Sale is invalid. Arabedichle. What about the translated here land that has a place for palms, like a field for palms. If it doesn't have, then there's no thought here that the buyer gets any palms because he was sold a field with room for palms, but no actual palms. Because he means a field that you could grow palms in, or that's suitable for palms. Amarle Lavar Midikla Planya, if he says, I'm selling you the field except for this one palm. Chazinan, then let's have a look. If if you have a good, like a reasonable, healthy palm in the field, then Shirei Shirei, then that is the one it's valid to say that he excluded that from the sale. Idikla Bishahu, but if it's a weak palm that's not producing anything, Kol Shekain Hanach. Then it's like what he means to say is I'm selling you the field except for that palm tree, that weak palm tree. And he means except for all the palm trees, even that weak palm tree, and then all of the palm trees are reserved. What if he says I'm selling you the field without trees? If the field has trees, then the clause is valid. You sell the field but not the trees. If the field has palms, then it excludes the palms. If it contains grapevines, then it's Lavarmi Gufne. If it has both trees and vines, Lavarme then we're referring to when you say except for the trees, you mean only the trees. If it has trees, other kinds of trees and palms, then and you say I'm selling it to you without the palms, but the other trees are included. But if it contains vines and palms, then the vidikle, yeah, lavar migufne, then then trees in that case refers, if that's the only kind of tree in the field is palms, then the clause excluding trees really means the palms, and the vines, a second. Yeah, I'm sorry, he's reserving. If he's reserving trees and there's only palms in the field, then that the trees is understood to mean it refers to excluding the palms, and the vines do get sold. Amarav, kol she'olo bechavel. If you have a tree that you could climb up with a rope, um, in other words, it's that large, have a shear, then that's a tree that is subject to the exclusion clause. I'm telling you, field without trees. Kol she'eino lo b'chavel, but if it's just a small tree that you don't need a rope to go up to climb up, it lo be sure that's not excluded. The Daine Gola Amre, but the Dayanim, the judges in the Golus said Kol Sheha'ol Kovsho Lahavi Shur. Um, um, if the yoke, meaning an ox wearing a yoke, is plowing and it goes by, and then the tree like is affected, like bends, right? Then that's not excluded. That's not a tree that you would say that this is a tree that's separate from the field because it's not yet rooted deep enough. If it's being disturbed by the passing by of the ox of the plow, then it's really more like part of the field. But if it's strong enough, established enough that it doesn't move when the plow goes by, then that is what the owner is referring to when he reserves the trees, saying, I'm keeping the trees. That's the kind of tree he's keeping. But there's no disagreement. Um, uh, it depends if we're talking about palms. So like which criteria is correct, right? Is it the rope criteria that the tree has to be big enough to climb with a rope, or is it the ox criteria, the plowing criteria that the tree has to be established enough not to be bent, not to be moved when the plow goes by? But they're not arguing with each other. Habedikle. The palm trees which grow tall, right? Then the criteria is it tall enough to be climbed with a rope? But other trees that you use the plowing criteria. And we will stop here for today. Pick it up tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yes.